Guys, do you still recall your first meeting?
Yeah, I met Woody when I just moved back from university to London and was staying with my mum. And I'd been playing some gigs by myself. And Woody had moved to London from Plymouth. And my mum found, he was a drum teacher and he'd been flyering through doors. And my mum found one of his flyers and was like, "You should call him, he might have some students." So I called Woody, we hung out and went for a drink. And he was like, I'll do it.
I'll be a drummer.
So we became friends and played for a while before we then started the band like a year or so later.
What do you think of his music?
Well, back then it was a little bit more left field, but no, I was quite taken by it, which is kind of why I started playing with him in the first place. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't have played with you if I didn't think you were any good. But
thanks, Woody.
I was quietly impressed. Yeah.
Were there any songs that he showed you that are on the album now?
From that period, not really, but there's one called Daniel in the Den, which you kind of written just as the Bastille was starting.
Yeah.
So
there's one called Daniel in the Den which is kind of from the end of that period. It's the only real song before we started the band that kind of made it onto the album.
Mm.
So why did you want to play with other people? Why did your mom say to you, "Well, maybe you can"?
You're such a loner.
Exactly. Get some friends.
I don't know. I think you know, I played for a couple of years under my own name and never really wanted to be a singer-songwriter. And,
No,
you know,
why not?
I don't know. It doesn't really appeal to me. I think people come to singer-songwriters with certain expectations and maybe judgments, and I don't know. I just kind of the thought of it kind of all being centered around me sort of made me feel a bit awkward, and I wanted to be able to experiment and try out different sounds, and initially Bastille was going to be quite sort of an anonymous thing, and it was just when I first put it online it was just a logo and some songs, and yeah, I just wanted to be in a band. You know, it's so much more fun. We get to hang out together all the time and travel around and play gigs and stuff, and that's kind of always what I'd wanted it to be. It just sort of took a while to get to that point.
If you listen to the songs pre-band and the songs that are have been finished now, what did you guys bring to the songs that he?
Well, I was thinking about this recently actually. Like, so when we kind of started, like Dan was doing his own thing in the bedroom. I don't think you had kind of ideas of what you wanted to do, but maybe didn't quite know how to do them. So then you had like Will come in doing bass and me doing drums, and we would say, "Well, how about this?" And I think the more that we played with you, the better you got at articulating and realising what you wanted. Then you kind of sort of took that on yourself almost.
Definitely. I mean, I know that like Woody was the first drummer that I'd ever played with, and before that I'd always just used percussion and loops. So you know, Woody was my kind of first-hand education in drumming and fills, and you know, Woody comes much more from a sort of rock. That's like where his taste lies. So yeah, no, it massively changed everything. And you know, a lot of our songs are quite like percussive and drum heavy, and got lots of toms and stuff. And a lot of that comes from Woody and Will as well. Will, who plays bass. You know, again, before that I'd always used keyboards for bass and stuff. So he's brought a lot of the sort of warmth and reality to Bastille.
Can we pick one song that you say, "Well, this is a song that I couldn't have done a few years ago, but now with the band you can hear what each person brings to it"?
There's a song called on the album called "Weight of Living Part 2", which is one of the more recent recordings that we did. Did it sort of to the end of last year. It's got, you know, you can hear Woody's drum fills all over it, and the sort of the beat and Will.
Which normally I wouldn't ever be allowed to do. It's just a moment of weakness.
If
for
it was
Dan.
up to Woody, it would be a sort of 45-minute drum fill. But yeah, I mean, you can hear Woody's fills and influence all over that, and then also there's this sort of like driving bass line as well. But I think also we've got a song called Pompeii as well, and that's, you know, it's got like Woody's like snare fills,
marching drums, and big toms,
and there's a really sort of quite cheesy, but I really like it, bass line that runs through the chorus in the second half. It's like boom, 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 boom.
Because I think Will just kind of threw it down, like thinking they'll never ever like allow that to get through, and it did. So
yeah. Just like a bit a kind of moment of like fun on the album, I guess. But yeah, so I think, you know, I'm definitely a bit of a control freak when it comes to the recording process and the writing process, and I quite like just getting on with things myself. But you know, the influence of being in a band and the influence and musicianship of the guys definitely massively permeates through the album for me.
I guess writing with the band in mind as well.
Oh, totally. Yeah, massive.
Is he a control freak? Like
Completely, yeah. But
yeah?
self-confessed, so it's fine.
Okay. Do you have an example?
Singing, sorry?
Do you have an example of him being a control freak?
Oh.
Probably too many to mention.
Yeah, too many. It's just kind of my life in general, basically, is that. No, a good example of a damn control freak. I don't. I'm sorry. I should have an anecdote up my sleeve. I can't think of anything specific. If it comes back to me, I'll let you.
Okay. Well, song titles: Pompeii, Icarus. What do you have with the ancient times?
I feel like I just quite wanted all the songs to be like narratives and stories in themselves, or moments from a bigger story. And I think I try not to write too autobiographically.
Why not?
Just because maybe I'm not that interesting a person. Maybe everything's been said before. I don't know. I just what interests me is historical stories. You know, the image of Pompeii and the city and the people who'd been kind of hit by the lava and frozen in that pose is to me so interesting. So I thought, I kind of imagined a conversation and a situation within that. That's what I'd rather spend my time thinking about than myself and my feelings and thoughts. There's definitely elements of kind of things that I think and opinions that I have that run throughout the songs, but my favourite way to approach a new song is to think of a scene or a situation or a scenario and kind of work from there. It's just kind of how I like to work.
Do you talk about the lyrics?
No, not really. I mean, like Dan just kind of beavers away and also like we've had songs that we were already into and kind of thought like that's going to be the kind of finished thing, and then Dan comes back the following week, like got new middle eight, hate all the verses, changed all those and that sort of stuff. So yeah, generally keeping us on our toes.
But do you like his lyrics?
I do, yeah. I will flop.
No,
yeah, absolutely. No, I just I don't know. I don't know if it's through kind of repetition of having to rehearse them a lot or kind of hear them in the studio being tracked, but I think Dan's got quite a good ear for kind of catchy melody, because some of the songs go round and round my head for weeks, which is a good thing, obviously. Yeah. But I've always been more into melody probably than lyrics. But personally,
do you know what the song is about when he's singing them? Or?
I think we've all got our own kind of perceptions of what it is. But I mean, well, Dan probably wouldn't tell us all the time. It's kind of
we do talk about them, but I think for me, I sort of know what I'm talking about in the songs, and then
to try and
I guess it's quite important for me for other people to have their own interpretations, and I think it can kind of sometimes spoil songs a bit when you tell people exactly what.
Bit of ambiguity is good.
Yeah. Pompeii, you already talked about. Icarus, what do you like about that story?
I just think again, it's a classic story. It's a really potent image, and I guess the song uses it as a metaphor for kind of, which lots of people have done, but use it as a metaphor kind of for hedonism and stuff like that. I just, it's just, for me, it grabbed me, and it kind of seems the kind of right thing to use in that song at that time.
Is it for you something that you're afraid of having to, or?
I'm not particularly. I mean, I don't feel like I'm particularly afraid of that. But it's a famous classical tale that's kind of become a byword for kind of warning people, young people, to not make mistakes and not to push things too far. And I think we're all at times of our lives where we've seen that happen to other people or whatever, and I don't know, it just seemed apt. Yeah.
But is it also something that maybe that's now more with your age that you're in now, that people are more vulnerable to that?
Potentially, yeah. I think young people have always been vulnerable to that, but
like who are we to say? So it's kind of a case of do as I say, not as I do. But everyone still does what they want, really.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the song "Way of Living" Part 2, you already mentioned it. Where's Part 1?
That we telling.
Part 1 is a the hidden track at the end of the album, which I don't know if it's on the press copy, but it's no, well, it's a hidden bonus track at the end of the album.
Clearly hidden very well on the press copy.
What do you like about hidden tracks?
I think for me, I found it really hard to pick which songs to put on the album. I mean, the ones that are there felt like the right ones to put on, but there were a whole load of other songs that I would have loved to have put on the album, but that would have made it like 16 songs long. So the real reason for putting it as a hidden track was an excuse to have it on the album, to have one extra song. I think it's kind of, Way of Living Part 1 is just, it's kind of a bit lighter in tone. It's I think it just feels, you know, some of the album's quite like, I think some of the songs can be quite heavy, especially lyrically, and Way of Living Part 1 is kind of just about like casting off your problems and getting on with stuff, and it felt to me like just quite a nice sentiment to end the album on.
I think like hidden tracks too, like, I think we're kind of a generation where albums were really, really important growing up, well to me anyway. Like I really enjoyed like the whole kind of album as a thing, so having a hidden track as well, I mean that would happen occasionally on albums, but then it just makes it feel like a proper album, I suppose. I don't know, to me.
And also, like we've always, since we started a couple of years ago, it's always been for us about putting out as much music as possible, and especially people who like our music, giving them as much stuff to hear through like mixtapes and EPs, and you know, recording as many tracks as possible. And so I think, you know, like there's an extended version of the album that comes out on the same day, and that's it's got an extra 3 songs on the end and a whole load of other stuff, and it's kind of, maybe that's the album we would have liked to have presented, but you know, you don't want to bore people.
Yeah, that's true. So you just thought, well, maybe make it less longer and
Short and sweet.
yeah. Bad Blood, the album title. Well, it's called after a song, Bad Blood. Why did you pick this song to be, well, the album title too?
It's one of our favourite songs to play, for starters, and one of the most recent ones as well.
Yeah, and I think as well, kind of having finished the album, stepping back from it a bit, I think a lot of the themes kind of are about characters kind of looking at themselves and looking back to their past and things they've done and how that affects them as a person, and it just seems to fit with that. There's something kind of quite, I don't know.
It's quite punchy, the title.
Yeah, like bloodlines and you know, DNA, going back to the start, all that kind of stuff. And it also, I just liked how it sounds. It sounds bold, and I think, yeah, I don't know, it fits with the name. I think to me, I think it's maybe a bit darker than how other people would perceive our music to be, but I kind of, it really sums it up for me.
Can you tell me where you were and when you chose the band name?
It should have been
We were
a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago, and my birthday is on Bastille Day, and I was going to a party with one of my friends, and we were walking through a station in London, and at the time I think there was an exhibition about the French Revolution of the Bastille or something. So there was a big poster on the tube that said like Bastille Day or something, and my friend saw it and was like, "That's your birthday, like that could be a band name," because we've been looking for one for ages, and I don't know, it just seemed to, it kind of resonates with me because we're growing up, French teachers at school would always get really excited whenever I said what my birthday was. And you know, we sort of discussed it, and we thought it you know, it sounds kind of, I don't know.
I guess it's not that evocative a word for us in like in the UK. So I mean, I like band names where you kind of make the word your own almost, or the name your own. Like people associate it with the music maybe rather than the French Revolution or that sort of stuff. Obviously abroad that's different, but
and it's interesting because you know, we set about making songs and making albums, making the songs and doing gigs and stuff, not really knowing where it would take us. And I guess we never really even thought about leaving England and playing elsewhere because, you know, we're not really that ambitious with it. So it's been interesting visiting different countries around Europe, and obviously the name resonates a lot more outside of England than it does in England. And I think in England a lot of people are just like, what is this weird word? Whereas here, you know, well, here and obviously in France and elsewhere, it kind of has a lot more potency to it. But I quite liked how it's kind of has associations of like revolution, and it's got, you know, historical meaning. And I quite hope that in a lot of our songs they kind of nod towards, like you said, interesting tales from the past and moments in history.
Last question. You've released 2 mixtapes.
Mm-hmm.
What was the hardest song to play on that mixtape?
I guess, well, playing it, I mean, obviously in the studio, you can do pretty much anything you want. It's just pulling it off live can be a bit of a challenge at times.
Yeah. What was the hardest?
Or one that you really well?
It's really funny because they were just so much fun to make. We just kind of, it was just us being really geeky and bringing together music from films that we love and
No,
old songs.
is there one song you say, well, that surprised me, how difficult it was or not? Or?
Well, there was a version of Killer by Adamski, which we tried to do in this kind of like trap, quite hard, like hip hop style.
But that's my favourite one.
Which was a lot of fun to make, but it was quite like, it took a while to get it to work. Because, you know, I think for us, a lot of the point of doing those mixtapes was to use other people's songs as kind of canvases to try out different production styles. And trap is something that I'm really into, but we're not necessarily good at. So it took us a while to kind of, to sort of get that right, I think.
And it's also maybe songwriting-wise that you learn from doing this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there are some sort of classic songs, there are some sort of cheesy songs from the 90s, and I think the reason that we nod towards those songs isn't necessarily because they're huge influences, but because I remember hearing them on the radio in the car, you know, being driven to school when I was like 5, and they had these massive hooks and these big choruses, and you know, whatever the production sounds like, they are kind of embedded in my mind, alongside all the music that I chose to listen to. You can't escape that. So
is there one example of those?
Or like
songs?
Hadaway's "What Is Love," for example, or "Rhythm of the Night," or "No Scrubs" by TLC. Do you know what I mean? These are all songs that I remember so well from when I was a kid and from growing up. And yeah, I don't know. I think that they're kind of, it's kind of cheesy pop, but it's undeniable. And I think,
what makes it then undeniable?
I think big hooks, big choruses.
Well, it's the fact that we can mess with the production and the sound of it so much, and then people still recognise it pretty much instantly. It's just kind of, it's just so ingrained.
Like, I think there's a song, "What Would You Do" by City High, which was the first cover we ever did. We just did it for fun. And if we play it at a gig, it's one of those songs that people they're like, "What's this?" And then by the chorus, everyone is singing along. And I don't think if you sung it to someone, I don't think anyone could name you the name of the band. Yeah. But that song, everyone knows it, and they don't know how they know the lyrics, but they know all of the lyrics. And I think those are those songs that probably like dominated the radio at those times, that just seep into people's minds and stay there.
Do you also want to do that?
No, not necessarily. Do you?
Well, I say that Dan says we're not very ambitious.
No, but I don't think that's what we just described as something to aspire to. Being a crap song that people remember.
Who said it's crap?
That's true.
No, I don't know.
I mean, it would be nice. It would be nice for people to remember the songs, and that's kind of, you know, that's something that I when I'm writing, I want the songs to be good and memorable, but also to have a level of kind of depth to them as well, and thought that goes into them.
I mean, like, we're all really into them, obviously, playing them, so I guess we kind of hope people would also enjoy them. That would be a nice thing to have.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.